My sister told me to stop asking for money at Thanksgiving dinner. She didn't realize I was the one secretly paying off her $52,800 debt for months, so I finally stopped and gave the loan sharks her location. The heat in my parents' dining room was a physical weight, pressing down with the smell of scorched sage and the cloying, fungal sweetness of Mom's mushroom soup casserole. It was a wet, oppressive warmth that made my cheap wool-blend sweater prickle against my collarbones. I'd bought it at a thrift store and it perpetually smelled faintly of mothballs and someone else's fabric softener. Across the table, my sister Seraphina laughed, a bright, tinkling sound that scraped against my nerves. She lifted her wine glass, the crystal catching the light. A new watch, a delicate gold-link Michael Kors, probably $250, slipped down her slender wrist. It was a bauble, a casual purchase. It was also, I calculated with the speed of a human abacus, approximately 41% of my last payment. My own hands were chapped, knuckles red from scrubbing cast-iron pans at the diner. I curled them in my lap, digging my unkempt nails into my palms. I was running on 4 hours of sleep and the fumes from a stale gas station coffee, the kind that tastes like burnt plastic and despair. $52,800, I thought. The number had become a mantra, a prayer, a curse. It lived behind my eyes. $52,800. Allura, honey, you've barely touched your food, Mom said, her voice laced with that familiar, anxious concern. She gestured with the serving spoon. More casserole, you're just skin and bones. I forced a smile that felt like cracking plaster. I'm fine, Mom, just tired from work. You're always tired from work, Ellie, Dad mumbled from behind his own plate, which was piled high enough to constitute a minor geological event. Maybe you should ask your boss for a raise, show some gumption. It doesn't really work like that, Dad, I said, the words thin. I nudged a green bean with my fork, the squeak of tines on porcelain setting my teeth on edge. My car, a 2004 Honda Civic with a rust problem that was less a problem and more a defining feature, had been making a sound like a bag of dying cats. The check engine light had been on for 6 months. I'd been quoted $900 for a new catalytic converter. $900 I didn't have. $900 that was, in reality, Sierra's. I might actually. I was wondering if you guys could maybe spot me a little. I hated the words as they left my mouth. They tasted like ash. Just for the car repair, I can pay you back next month after my bonus. There was no bonus. Dad sighed, a long, weary sound of disappointment. Mom's face puckered. This was the part I dreaded. The shame, the quiet judgment that I, at 27, still couldn't get my shit together. Again, Dad asked. Allura, that's the 3rd time this year. It's just to get to work, Dad. Oh, for God's sake. Seraphina set her wine glass down with a sharp click. The table went silent. Even Dad stopped chewing. Sierra had that power. She was the sun. We were the sad, cold little planets orbiting her whims. She dabbed her lips, glossy, berry crush pink, with a linen napkin. Her eyes, the same blue as mine but somehow brighter, colder, settled on me. It wasn't malice. It was worse, it was disappointment, the kind a CEO has for a failing intern. Allura, honestly, she said, her voice dripping with the kind of practiced, gentle concern that was more cutting than any insult. It's Thanksgiving. Can we not talk about this? It's embarrassing. My blood went cold, not hot, not angry, just icy, static cold. Embarrassing, I whispered. Yes, you really need to get your finances in order. She leaned forward as if sharing a kind, sisterly secret with the entire table. I know you're creative or whatever, but the real world runs on budgets. You can't just keep leaking money and then expecting Mom and Dad to patch you up. She leaned back, beaming at our parents. We all have to be responsible. We have to live within our means, that's all I'm saying. She gestured at me, a delicate wave of her hand. The gold watch gleamed. So just stop asking. The silence in the room was absolute, broken only by the tick, tick, tick of the grandfather clock in the hall. My mother looked down at her plate. My father cleared his throat and took a sudden, violent interest in his mashed potatoes. They were ashamed of me. I stared at Seraphina. She looked so proud, so adult, so responsible. She smelled of Chanel No. 5 and entitlement. I, on the other hand, was wearing a sweater that smelled like mothballs. My gaze drifted from her watch to her new silk blouse, $120, to the fresh, salon-perfect blonde highlights in her hair, $300, to the designer leather bag resting by her chair, $650. I did the math, it was effortless now. I was a savant of Seraphina's spending. That was $1,320 in casual, visible purchases. I thought about the payment portal. I thought about the $1,100 I'd sent just last week, money earned from 70 hours of slinging hash browns and double-shot lattes. I thought about the phone call 8 months ago that had ruined my life. I looked at my sister, the architect of my poverty, who had just told me in front of our parents to stop asking for money. I felt a strange, terrifying calm settle over me. The prickling of the sweater vanished. The smell of the casserole faded. All I could feel was the cold, hard edge of the fork in my hand. "You know what, Sera?" I said, my voice unnervingly even. "You're right." I placed my napkin on the table, the linen suddenly feeling too soft, too clean. "I absolutely need to get my finances in order." I stood up. The scrape of the chair legs on the hardwood floor was deafening. "Elora, honey, where are you going?" Mom asked, her eyes wide with panic. "I just lost my appetite," I said, looking right at Sera. "Happy Thanksgiving." My apartment was cold. The ancient, rattling radiator in the corner offered more noise than warmth, a hollow clank hiss that did nothing to fight the damp November chill seeping through the single-pane window. My world was a landscape of beige pre-war walls, a beige futon that folded flat with a groan of protest, and the beige, watery broth of my dinner, a 39-cent packet of instant ramen. I sat at my rickety card table, the laptop open. The blue and white interface of the Prestige Apex lender's portal glowed in the dim light. Total balance, $52,800. I'd been staring at it for an hour, the scene from Thanksgiving playing on a loop in my head. It's just embarrassing. 8 months ago, it wasn't embarrassment. It was pure, unadulterated terror. I'd come home from a double shift to find 2 men in ill-fitting suits waiting by my apartment door. They looked less like financial consultants and more like guys who break kneecaps for a living. They weren't there about my debt. I didn't have any. I drove a beater, my credit card had a $500 limit I paid off monthly, and my idea of a splurge was name-brand toothpaste. They were there about Seraphina's. It turned out my entrepreneur sister, whose wellness-influencing brand consisted of reselling green tea powder from Alibaba in cuter packaging, had needed startup capital. A lot of it. When legitimate banks laughed at her business plan, which was, essentially, be pretty on Instagram, she'd turned to Prestige Apex lenders. Their interest rate was 28.9%, compounded daily. And when they asked for a cosigner, she'd given them one. Me, "That's not my signature," I had told the larger of the 2 men, my hand shaking so hard the paper rattled. The forgery was good. Sera had spent years perfecting my signature to sign us out of high school early. I thought it was a funny game. The man had just smiled, a thin, unpleasant expression. "It's on a notarized document, ma'am." "As far as we're concerned, you co-signed. Your sister," he checked his file, "Miss Seraphina Vance, has defaulted on her first 3 payments. The full amount is now due, plus penalties." "But I don't have this kind of money." "We advise you find it," the smaller man said, looking at my door number. "It would be a shame for this to escalate. Fraud investigations get so messy. They tend to pull in everyone, your parents. Your employer. Jail time is unpleasant, we hear." The threat was clear. They didn't care who paid, they just wanted their money, and my credit, my name, my entire future was the collateral. When I confronted Sera, the scene was theatrical. She'd met me at a neutral ground coffee shop, already crying before the lattes hit the table. "I was desperate, Elora," she'd wept, her voice a reedy whisper. The mascara Dior, $40, ran in perfect, tragic streaks. "This was my one chance. I was going to be a success. I was going to pay it all back before you even knew. You committed fraud, Sera. You forged my name. This is a crime." "It's not a crime if I fix it," she insisted, grabbing my hands. Her skin was soft, lotioned. "Please, Ellie, please, you can't tell Mom and Dad. It would kill Dad. His heart. You know his heart. And this would ruin me. I'd be arrested." She was right about one thing. The scandal, the shame of it, would devastate our parents. Our father, with his mild hypertension and fierce, old-fashioned pride, would be mortified. Our mother would simply collapse. "So what do we do?" I'd asked, the floor falling out from under me. Sierra's tears dried with suspicious speed. "I have a plan. The collectors are harassing you, right? Because your name is on it, so you set up the payment plan with them. You're so good at budgets, Ellie, you can handle them. And I," she'd said, sitting up straighter, "will pay you every single penny. I'll transfer you the money every month, all of it. You just be the middleman, please. It's the only way to protect the family." She had called me her savior, her rock. I was so stupid. The first month she sent the money, $1,100. The second month she sent $700. "Things are just a little tight. Launch is next month. I promise I'll make it up." The third month, $200. The fourth month, nothing. When I called her, she sounded annoyed. "God, Alara, I told you I'm building a brand. It takes capital. You can't rush this. Just cover it for now. I'm good for it." By the eighth month, Thanksgiving, I had paid $21,400 of my own money. Money from extra shifts, from skipping meals, from selling my grandmother's locket, from not fixing my car. And she had a new watch. Back in my cold apartment, I stared at the screen. $52,800. The number hadn't budged because the interest was accruing faster than my meager payments. I was Sisyphus. This was my boulder. "It's just embarrassing. Just stop asking." My breath hitched, a dry, ragged sound. It wasn't a sob. It was the sound of something breaking. The hollow, dutiful part of me that still believed in family and sisters and protecting Mom and Dad. I had been sacrificing my life to protect her while she was using my sacrifice to fund hers. I reached for the mouse. My hand was perfectly steady. I clicked on Manage Payments. I clicked on Cancel Automatic Monthly Payment. A small box popped up. "Are you sure? Defaulting on your payment plan may result in severe penalties." A slow smile spread across my face. It felt alien, sharp. "Yes," I whispered to the empty room. "I am absolutely fucking sure." I closed the laptop. The apartment was still cold, but the beige didn't seem so bleak. It seemed clear. I finished my ramen, the salty broth suddenly tasting like victory. The first call came 3 days later. I was at work, my hands submerged in a sink of lukewarm, greasy water, scrubbing at a skillet with caked-on egg yolk. The diner's ancient phone, mounted on the wall by the walk-in, rang with a shrill, demanding brrr ring. "Alara, for you," shouted Sal, the line cook, flipping a burger with a greasy spatula. I dried my hands on my apron, the starchy cotton smelling of bleach and old onions. "This is Alara, Miss Vance." The voice was the same one from 8 months ago, the smaller man, smooth, cold like river stones. "We note your payment for the first of the month has been missed." "Yes," I said. I watched Sal salt a batch of fries. "It has." A pause. The man was clearly not used to this. "Miss Vance, as we discussed, adherence to the payment schedule is not optional." "I understand," I said, my voice polite. "I'm having a bit of a financial reassessment. I was advised to get my finances in order." "A reassessment?" he repeated, the word dripping with disbelief. "Your next payment is late. The penalties are already accruing. If we do not receive payment within 48 hours, we will be forced to escalate, as previously discussed." "I'll have to get back to you," I said. "Miss Vance, I don't think you." I hung up. My heart was hammering, a frantic bird in my chest. This was the first domino. It was terrifying. It was also the first real breath I'd taken in months. I turned back to the sink, the smell of soap and grease suddenly sharp and real. The real test came later that night. My car, which had been gasping its way to and from the diner, finally gave up the ghost. It died at a stoplight 2 miles from my apartment with a sound like a gunshot followed by a sad, metallic sigh. I sat in the dark, the useless hazard lights clicking in the cabin. The smell of burnt oil was overwhelming. I called a tow truck. The driver, a weary-looking man named Frank, took one look under the hood. "She's done, honey," he said, wiping his hands on an oil-stained rag. "Looks like you threw a rod. Engine's seized up. You're looking at a new engine block." How much?" I whispered, the cold of the sidewalk seeping through my thin sneakers. "For this model, 4-5 grand. Honestly, you'd be better off scrapping it." $4,000. It might as well have been 4 million. I had $112 in my checking account. Tears pricked my eyes, hot and angry. This was the real cost, not just the watch or the blouse. It was this. stranded on a dark road, my only way to work a smoking heap of metal, all because I was paying for Seraphina's wellness brand. I paid the tow truck driver the last of my cash to haul it to a scrapyard. I walked the 2 miles home in the dark, my feet ached. My face was numb. When I got to my apartment, I collapsed onto the futon, too tired to even take off my coat. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Sera. Sera, hey. Did you see my story? I squinted. My phone buzzed again. It was a notification from Prestige Apex Lenders. Pal, your payment is 72 hours overdue. This is your final notice before legal escalation. My thumb hovered, then tapped on the Instagram notification first. The video was loud, bouncy, synthetic pop music. It was Seraphina filming herself. She was on a plane. She turned the camera to the window, showing clouds, then back to her face, pouting with a travel pillow around her neck. The caption read, OMW to LA, Sunpalm Suo excited for the Number Authentic You Wellness Summit. Time to network and build my brand. Number boss babe, number girl boss life, number manifesting. She was on a plane to Los Angeles for a wellness summit. I thought of the tow truck driver. I thought of the seized engine. I thought of the $112 in my account. I thought of the text message from the loan shark. I clicked on the text from Prestige Apex. I tapped call. The same smooth-voiced man answered on the first ring. Miss Vance. We were hoping you'd come to your senses. I have, I said, my voice flat dead, but I think you have the wrong Miss Vance. I'm not interested in games. Neither am I. My sister, Seraphina Vance, is the primary borrower on this loan. I am the cosigner whose signature was forged. I've been paying on her behalf under duress to protect my family. She advised me at Thanksgiving to get my finances in order, so I have. I am no longer paying her debt. The line was silent. I could hear the man breathing. A forgery claim, he said slowly. That's a very serious allegation and very difficult to prove. Oh, I think I can prove it, I said. But you don't need me to, you just need to get paid. I'm telling you, I'm tapped. The well is dry. I have $112 to my name. My car just died. You can't get blood from a stone, but my sister. My sister just got on a plane to Los Angeles for a wellness summit. She's staying at the Beverly Wilshire. She just posted it on Instagram. Another pause, longer this time. I heard the faint clack-clack of a keyboard. Seraphina Vance, he murmured, Beverly Wilshire. She has assets, I continued, the words coming easily now, cold and sharp. A new car, a designer wardrobe, a business that she used your $52,800 to fund. I am a barista with a negative net worth. Who would you rather pursue? We are legally entitled to pursue you, Miss Vance. Your name is on the line. And I am legally entitled to file a police report for fraud and forgery, which will lock this whole thing up in court for years. You won't see a dime, or, I said, taking a breath, you can go after the person who actually has the money, the person who just landed at LAX. Her flight number is American 104. She'll be at the baggage claim in about 20 minutes. I gave him her cell phone number, I gave him her Instagram handle, I gave him everything. Go get your money, I said, and lose my number. I hung up. My hands were shaking so hard I dropped the phone. It clattered to the floor. I stared at it. A text from my mom flashed across the screen. Mom, hi honey, just checking in. Sera is in LA for a big business meeting. We're so proud. Hope your car is okay. I started to laugh. It was a raw, ugly sound, half sob, half bark. It was the most liberating sound I had ever made. The silence was, at first, blissful. It lasted for 48 hours. No calls from Prestige Apex. No texts from Seraphina, who was presumably too busy number manifesting to check in. Then, the hurricane made landfall. My phone exploded on a Saturday morning. I was at my new job. I'd been hired as a data entry clerk at a small logistics company. It was mind-numbing, but it was salaried, had benefits, and didn't require me to smell like onions. First, a text from Sera. Sera. Calling me now, then another. Sera, what did you do? And another. Sera, they're ruining everything. Pick up the phone, you bitch. Finally, a call from my mother. Her voice was a high-pitched, frantic wail. Alara, oh my God, Alara, your sister. These men, they're saying horrible things. They said she owes them money. They came to her hotel. She's hysterical. I leaned back in my new, ergonomic office chair. It was amazing what a little lumbar support could do for one's spine. What men, Mom? I asked, feigning confusion. I don't know, collectors, they froze her bank accounts. They're talking about seizing her car. Alara, this must be a mistake. Seraphina doesn't have any debt, she told us, she said. She said you were the one with money problems. The beautiful, cold, perfect rage settled over me again. Did she now? Yes, she said you were jealous and you sixed these people on her, that you gave them her information. Alara, what is going on? Mom, I said, my voice perfectly calm. I think you, Dad, and I need to have a talk. Without Sira, I'm on my way. I walked into my parents' house to a scene of quiet devastation. Dad was sitting at the kitchen table, his face gray, staring at his hands. Mom was pacing, twisting a dish towel into a rope. Alara, thank God, she sobbed, rushing to me. Your sister she's flying home, she's a wreck, she said. She said you forged her name on a loan, that you're trying to frame her? I stopped. I actually stopped and stared at her. The sheer, colossal audacity of it was breathtaking. Sira wasn't just a liar, she was an artist, she said. I forged her name, I let out a short, sharp laugh. It doesn't make any sense, Mom cried. None of this does. Oh, it's about to, I said. Dad, sit down, you too, Mom. I pulled out my phone. I pulled out the tattered file folder I'd been keeping under my futon for 8 months. I laid it all out on the kitchen table where not 2 weeks earlier my sister had shamed me. The original loan document with my forged signature. My bank statements with 8 months of $1,100, $700, and $200 payments highlighted. The log of every diner and barista shift I'd worked, the receipt from the scrapyard for my dead car, and the texts, the ones where she begged me to cover for her, the ones where she called me her savior. My parents stared at the documents, their faces crumbling. This can't be, Dad whispered, picking up the loan agreement. $52,800, Alara, why didn't you tell us? Because she begged me not to, I said, my voice hard. She said the shock would hurt your heart, Dad. She said it would ruin the family. She said she would pay me back. She lied. Oh, Sira, Mom breathed, her hand going to her mouth. It was a sound of profound, bottomless disappointment. She called me from LA, I continued, screaming that I was a bitch for ruining everything. She wasn't scared, she wasn't remorseful, she was angry that I had turned off the tap. She was angry that her doormat had finally gotten up. Doormat? Dad repeated, his voice dangerously low. Ah, that's the part I missed. I walked past them down the hall to Seraphina's bedroom. It was still a shrine to her, pristine, with her expensive perfumes on the dresser. I went to her nightstand. Tucked inside her wellness and manifestation journal, a $50 leather-bound book was a folded piece of paper. I'd found it months ago when I was looking for a stamp. I'd almost convinced myself I'd misread it. I brought it back to the kitchen and unfolded it. It was a goals list. 1. Finalize Seraphina wellness branding. 2. Secure influencer summit tickets. 3. Get Mom and Dad to invest in new brand once old debt is clear. 4. Keep Alara paying on the PA loan for at least 6 more months. She's a total doormat. She'll do anything to protect M and D as long as they think she's the financial mess. I still look like the golden child. 5. New Mercedes by August. Number manifest. I laid the list on the table. My mother made a small, strangled sound and sat down hard. My father, however, stood up. He was a quiet man, slow to anger, but the color rising in his face was a shade of red I had never seen. He read the list. He read it twice. She called you a doormat, he said, his voice thick. She called me embarrassing, I corrected him. At Thanksgiving, for asking you for money to fix my car, the car I couldn't fix because I was paying for her silk blouses and spa trips. Dad looked at the loan agreement. He looked at my bank statements. He looked at Sira's goals list. Then he walked to the phone, picked up the receiver and dialed. Hi, Sira, it's Dad. Yes, your mother told me. No, you listen to me. You are not to come here. When your plane lands, you can go to a hotel, or you can go to hell, but you are not coming to this house, because I just read your goals list. You are no longer welcome in my home. He hung up the phone. The silence in the kitchen was no longer heavy. It was sharp, sterile, and absolute. The following week was a blur of controlled demolition. My father, galvanized by a level of paternal rage I hadn't known he possessed, went into what my mother called fix-it mode. He and I sat at the kitchen table, which had transformed from a place of shame to a war room. We had my file, we had Sira's journal, we had Mom who, after 48 hours of weeping, had shifted into a state of icy, quiet fury. First, Dad said, pulling a yellow legal pad toward him, we fix you. he wrote ELARA at the top. I am so ashamed, Alara, he said, his voice thick, that we let her, that we believed. We saw you struggling, we thought you were being irresponsible. I know, I said, and I did. It was easier to believe the quiet daughter was flighty than to believe the shiny one was a sociopath. We're paying you back, he said, tapping the pad. Every cent, the $21,400 you paid. Plus the $2,000 for your grandmother's locket and the value of your car, we'll take it out of the retirement account. Dad, no, you don't have to. You will not argue with me on this, young lady, he said, his voice iron. This is not a gift, this is restitution, this is family debt, we are cleaning our house. The next day, $25,000 appeared in my bank account. I stared at it, I cried. I went online and bought a 2018 Toyota Camry, certified pre-owned, in cash. The smell of the clean upholstery, that faint chemical and plastic new car scent, was the smell of freedom. The second item on Dad's list was Seraphina. She's been calling, Mom said, her lips a thin, white line. She was nursing a cup of black coffee, non-stop from a hotel near the airport. She's out of money. Good, Dad grunted. She says the loan company, Prestige Apex, is demanding the full $52,000 immediately or they're pressing charges. She says she's going to declare bankruptcy. She can't, I said, sipping my own coffee. It was from a real coffee shop, a $6 latte. It tasted divine. They're a high-risk lender. That's not a bank loan. It's closer to a mob loan. They don't care about bankruptcy. They'll just ruin her. Besides, the loan was procured by fraud. It's a criminal matter. My parents looked at me. The last few weeks had given me a crash course in predatory lending. So what do we do? Mom whispered. We can't just let her be arrested, can we? Dad looked at me. It was his way of asking. This was my call. I thought about it. I thought about the cold apartment, the instant ramen, the shame, the dead car on the side of the road. I thought about doormat. No, I said, surprising myself. We don't let her get arrested, and we don't let her declare bankruptcy. We do the last thing she expects. Dad raised an eyebrow. We pay it, I said. What? Mom and Dad said in unison. We pay the loan, the full $52,800. We call Prestige Apex. We negotiate a one-time settlement. They'll probably take $45,000 to close the books, and we pay it off. From the retirement account. Alara, after what she did, Dad was stunned. It's not for her, Dad, it's for us. It's the only way to get these people out of our lives forever. It's the only way to truly cut the cord. We pay it, we close the account, and we sever their last tie to our family, to my name. Dad stared at me, then a slow, shrewd smile spread across his face. Clean, I like it, we cut the cancer out completely. He made the call. It was an ugly negotiation, but Dad was surprisingly good at it. They settled on $48,000 for immediate wire transfer. The final step was the one I'd been waiting for. Dad and I didn't go to the airport hotel. We went to his lawyer's office. It smelled of old books, lemon polish, and expensive leather. When Seraphina was ushered in by a paralegal, she looked small. Her salon-perfect hair was lank, her skin splotchy from crying. Her expensive silk blouse was wrinkled. She saw me and Dad, and her face lit up with relief. Oh, Daddy, oh God, you came. She rushed to hug him. Dad put up a hand. Sit down, Seraphina. The coldness in his voice stopped her. She sat wary in the leather chair opposite the huge mahogany desk. What is this? She asked. Where's Mom? Your mother is at home, Dad said. We're here to solve your problem. The lawyer, Mr. Harrison, slid a stack of papers across the desk. What's this? Sera asked, her hand trembling. This, I said, speaking for the first time, is a contract. We've paid off your debt. The entire $48,000. Prestige Apex lenders will never contact you or me or Mom and Dad ever again. Your problem is solved. Sera's relief was so profound it was almost grotesque. Oh my God, oh thank you, Daddy, I knew you'd. We're not finished, Dad said. That money was not a gift, it was a loan from us. This, he tapped the papers, is a repayment contract. You will pay us back $73,400. Sera's face went white. $73,400, but the debt was $48,000. It was $48,000, I said, sliding another piece of paper toward her. It was an itemized invoice, plus the $21,400 I paid on your behalf over the last 8 months. plus $4,000 for the value of my car which I had to scrap. That comes to $73,400. This is insane, she shrieked. You can't. We can, Mr. Harrison said, his voice mild. It's a legally binding promissory note. You will pay your parents $1,200 a month for the next 62 months. If you miss a single payment, we are authorized to begin wage garnishment. Wage garnishment. I'm building a brand, not anymore, Dad said. He slid another document over. This is a bill of sale. To cover your first month's payment, we are taking possession of your car, the Mercedes. It's parked outside. Alara will be driving it home. You'll need to find a new job, a real one. I hear the diner is hiring. Seraphina stared at us, her mouth open, her eyes wide with horrified comprehension. But my car, my life, you're ruining me? No, Seraphina, I said, standing up. I picked up the keys to my new Mercedes, the one she'd bought with my pain. We're just helping you get your finances in order. We're living within our means. That's all we're saying. The Mercedes smelled like her. Chanel No. 5 and entitlement. I drove with the windows all the way down, the 40-degree air blasting my face, trying to exorcise the ghost of my sister from the perforated leather seats. The engine was a low, powerful purr, a stark contrast to the death rattle of my old Honda. It was a beautiful, stupid, expensive machine, and I hated that I loved driving it. I didn't drive it home. I drove it to a CarMax and sold it on the spot. They gave me $28,000. It was less than she'd paid, but it was fast. I took that $28,000 and the $25,000 from my parents, and I put a $53,000 down payment on a small, two-bedroom condo in a boring, quiet neighborhood. My mortgage was less than my old rent. The silence of my new life was revelatory. It was a quiet born not of loneliness but of peace. The only clanking was from my own coffee mug in my own sink. The only smells were my own: brewing coffee, fresh paint, and a basil plant I was managing to keep alive on the windowsill. I kept the data entry job. The predictability was soothing. I liked the click-clack of the keyboard. I liked my boss, a no-nonsense woman named Brenda who valued punctuality over personality. I liked my paycheck, which now went entirely to me. I bought a new sweater, a soft cashmere blend, full price. It smelled like nothing but the store. Seraphina, as predicted, did not take well to her new reality. She'd had to move into a tiny, furnished studio apartment above a pizzeria. The smell of garlic and oregano, she'd complained to Mom, was permeating her aura. She did, in fact, get a job. She was a hostess at a high-end steakhouse. The irony was not lost on me. She, who had lectured me on real jobs, was now seating the kind of people she'd always tried to be. The first payment of $1,200 arrived on time via a bank transfer from my father's lawyer. The calls to Mom started about a week later. At first they were tearful, "How could you?" diatribes. Then they became bargaining. "Mom," I heard her say one Sunday when I was over for dinner, a dinner I could now attend without a pit of dread in my stomach. Mom had put her on speakerphone, a new, brutal form of transparency in our family. "I just don't see why Alara gets all this money. She has a condo, she has a car, I have nothing. This isn't fair." "Fair," Mom said, her voice dangerously calm as she chopped carrots. "Chop, chop, chop. Fair was you in a new watch telling your sister she was embarrassing for being poor, the sister who was paying for the watch. That was fair, was it? But she's always been the victim. You're always taking her side." "We're not taking sides, Seraphina," Mom said, pausing her chopping. "We're balancing the books. Your father and I failed you. We let you believe that charm was a substitute for character. We failed Alara by letting you." "So I'm being punished?" Sierra shrieked. "You are being held accountable," Mom snapped and hung up. She looked at me, took a deep breath, and tossed the carrots into the pot. "More wine, honey." I saw Seraphina in person 3 months later. I was out with Brenda and a few other women from work. We were celebrating a new contract, and Brenda had insisted on this fantastic steakhouse. I saw her as soon as we walked in. She was standing behind a tall, darkwood podium holding a stack of menus. She was wearing the mandated hostess uniform, a severe black dress, sensible black flats. Her hair was pulled back in a tight, unglamorous bun. Our eyes met. I saw a flicker of emotions so fast it was like a cinematic reel. Shock, recognition, white-hot humiliation, and then a desperate, pleading hope. She thought I was there to gloat, or maybe she thought I was there to, what, save her again. I just looked at her. I didn't smile, I didn't scowl, I just saw her, the architect of my misery, now just a woman in uncomfortable shoes, smelling faintly of steak sauce. Brenda, oblivious, walked up. Hi, reservation for 4 under Matthews. Sierra's eyes darted from me to Brenda, and the professional mask snapped into place. It was cracked and the smile didn't reach her eyes, but it was there. Of course, she said, her voice a strained, breathy version of its former self. Right this way. She grabbed 4 menus. She led us through the dining room, the clatter of silverware and quiet conversation washing over us. I walked right behind her. I could see the tiny tag on the back of her black dress, a cheap polyester blend. She stopped at a booth. Your server will be with you shortly. Enjoy your meal. Thank you, Brenda said cheerfully. Seraphina turned to leave. Our eyes met one last time. I gave her a small, polite nod. The kind you give a stranger who holds the door for you. It was an acknowledgement, and it was a dismissal. She turned away, her back rigid, and walked back to her podium. I slid into the booth. The leather was plush and cool. What a night, Brenda said, raising her water glass. To us, I said, picking up my menu. I was, for the first time in a very long time, genuinely hungry. 1 year later, I was sitting on my own small balcony, watching the sun come up. The air was cool and sharp with the smell of damp pavement and the first hints of spring jasmine. The coffee in my mug was hot, strong, and brewed in a machine that I had bought new from a real store. My phone buzzed on the patio table. It wasn't a creditor, it wasn't a panicked relative. It was a simple alert from my banking app. Direct deposit received, $2,050, Vance Logistics, automatic transfer successful, minus $1,200, mortgage, automatic transfer successful. Minus $300, condo HOA, automatic transfer successful, minus $250, Roth IRA, current balance, $14,780.22. I looked at the number. It was more than just money, it was safety, it was quiet, it was a future. It was a number that I had built dollar by dollar in a quiet office in a quiet life. My relationship with my parents had changed. It was better, more honest. The polite, fragile fictions we'd all lived by were gone, burned away by the acid of the truth. We didn't talk about the incident often, but it was always there, a scar that had healed over, reminding us that betrayal was real, but so was recovery. Dad had taken up woodworking. Mom was volunteering at the animal shelter. They seemed lighter, free from the burden of maintaining Seraphina's golden child facade. Seraphina herself was a ghost. She'd lasted 6 months at the steakhouse before she'd apparently had a meltdown, as reported by Mom, and quit. She'd moved 2 towns over and was, according to her last bitter text to our mother, working in retail like a commoner. But the $1,200 payment had never been late. My father's lawyer was nothing if not efficient. The debt which had once been my noose was now her anchor, tying her to the real world she had always tried to float above. She had 49 payments left. I took another sip of coffee. The sun was clearing the horizon now, washing the beige walls of my condo building in a warm, buttery light. I thought about the number $52,800. For so long, it had been a monster under my bed, a symbol of my own weakness, my own fear. It was the price of my silence. Now it was just a number, a paid-off, closed-out, irrelevant string of digits. I thought about the thrift store sweater, the instant ramen, the cold apartment, the smell of the seized engine. I thought about the sound of Sierra's voice, so full of careless, casual cruelty. It's just embarrassing. My phone buzzed again. This time it was a text from Brenda. Brenda, happy Saturday, you still up for that hike? 8 a.m. I smiled, my fingers tapping the screen. Me, absolutely on my way. I stood up, rinsed my mug, and grabbed my keys. Not the Mercedes keys, not the Honda keys, just my keys. They felt light in my hand. I locked my door, a door with a lock I had paid for, and walked out into the bright, quiet, ordinary morning.